Well, hello and welcome to the kitchen of the dollhouse for another reading from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Just Elvers for November 12th, the day of sensual charisma. And here at the top of the page is a visual representation of the day of sensual charisma. What we have us, what I'm guessing to be some kind of, I don't know, like a Fibonacci sequence, golden ratio type representation. I know that's not at all what that looks like, but you know, it's got kind of a spiral thing going on. But you know what? It's not altogether all too important. Maybe we'll make some kind of connotation for that choice as we get on with the read. But again, like I said, not altogether all too important. No, it's November 12th. What is important is it's someone's birthday today, and me wishing you a happy birthday if that is the case. Now, sometimes these videos will find folks late, I don't know, days, weeks, months. You're a busy individual, I imagine, so completely justified. But if that happens to be the case, I just want to say, I hope you had a happy birthday. That's right. But for everyone else who's just joining us randomly, or more ideally, to celebrate the November 12th birthday, I want to say hello, welcome, and I hope you enjoy yourself. Now, before we dive in with the redirect, something I like to do around these here parts, let's roll some dice. That's right. This is the DykASSt all birthday broadcast, so I like to live up to the namesake there, but I do so more importantly for synchronicity's sake. And here we rolled us a 5 and a 3, 4 and 8. Now, what is synchronicity? You're probably wondering. Well, it's just you getting out in the world and letting the universe show you it's with you on your path. And you do that by looking for your numbers. That's right. Or some other mutually agreed upon sign, if you like. See, you can roll your own dice, get your own number if you don't like mine, but the intention's there. That being said, it's probably preferable you get your own pair of dice so that you can ascribe directional values to number sets, if you like, and be able to roll time limits with which to go in those directions. But that being said, once you reach the end of your time limit there, you stop, compose yourself, and you look for your signs. That being said, it doesn't mean your signs won't pop up as you're getting along on your path, but like I said, just chase them down when you see them. That's right. You never know where the universe might just lead you. But once you get the end of your time limits, maybe you haven't seen anything, and maybe you don't even see your numbers. Well, in that case, look for anomalies. That's right. Maybe you're in a crowd of folks. They're just wearing otherwise, blasé-looking garments, but maybe somebody walks by in a hot pink shirt. Well, I tell you what, that stands out as an anomaly in my mind. But maybe you just find what sticks out as an anomaly in your mind. And then you know what you do? You roll your dice to find out how long to follow it for. And maybe that anomaly is an individual that gets on a bus. Well, you know what? If your time limit's not up yet, get on there too. Maybe you just so happen to have perfect change in your pocket for a bus ride when you otherwise don't ever ride the bus. You know what? There's a piece of synchronicity for you too. But you know what? Maybe you roll your dice, find out how long to stay on the bus, and about that time limit comes up, you get off on, I don't know, maybe the number 8 stop. That's right. Just things like that. You never know what you're going to see. So get out there, see, taste, touch, feel the magic. You might just run into a whirligig shop. I don't know, someplace that sells those infinite spiral deals that you hang from the ceiling there. The day could even take on a theme like that, who's to say? But in any event, I think you get the idea of synchronicity, so let's dive in with your birthday read. Your month is November, your day is the 12th, your sign is 19 to 21 degrees, a Scorpio of the Scorpio III period specifically, first day of as much, I believe, and your quality and elements is fixed water. All right, November 12th, the day of sensual charisma. Sensuality and magnetism, or rather magnetic attraction, are central themes in the lives of November 12 people. Sensuality expressed in their own physical makeup or the works they are involved in producing, and magnetism demonstrated in family life, secret love relationships, or in their career or social circle. Exceptional or highly talented November 12 people must be extremely careful about misusing ego drives. Their capacity to work miracles in everyday situations, it wins them adulation in some cases and places them in a godlike position in their admirers' eyes. And such worship can foster sociopathic tendencies in those born on this day. On the other hand, morally evolved November 12 people of all abilities can use their powers in the service of bringing beauty and enlightenment to those around them. And most November 12 people have an integrity and devotion to their work that imbues their persona with a singular grace. And those November 12 people with public careers may become a highly positive political force. The conflict between golden qualities on the one hand and dark characteristics on the other is often at work in November 12 people. And both sides may in fact be entwined throughout their lives. However, it is also possible that a November 12 person will show a marked decay from a promising golden youth to a dark adulthood. Those born on this day face a great personal challenge in getting a handle on their wilder energies, which involves knowing themselves better and perhaps dedicating themselves to a worthwhile cause of some kind. The creation or appreciation of beauty in all its forms is an overriding interest of November 12 people, whether it be found in beautiful children, art, home environments, bodily form, or just an outright sensuality. However, behind this impulse toward the beautiful is something even more basic, and that is the force of magnetic attraction itself, which so irresistibly propels a November 12 person along. It is in the red-hot crucible of their soul that impersonal dark forces rework and mold sensuous images, which get projected out on the world and become at once their heaven and their hell. Life, therefore, is not always easy for November 12 people. Tragedy and misfortune can unaccountably plague them between days, weeks, or even years of ecstatic happiness and thrilling experiences. Again, the key to their balancing their lives and getting a grip on their powers is self-knowledge. If they can only appreciate how fully what materializes around them is a product of their own character, own up to moral responsibilities, and take their lives in hand in an ethical fashion, they will be able to cope with negative energies which seem to invariably come their way. If not, they will be largely at the mercy of forces beyond their control. All right, how about that for a very interesting, dynamic birthday read? Wasn't as well rounded out as some of the others, but I would say it did so pretty well in either case. That being said, hey, I got a little bit of a commentary I like to provide, so let's dive in with some notes, all right? Go over what we just went through. See if I had anything to say about it here. All right, November 12th, day, sensual charisma. Sensuality and magnetic attraction are said to be the central themes in your lives. Sensuality apparently manifesting in your physical makeup and in your works, and your magnetism in your family life or secret love relationship or your social circle in general, right? What else do we have here? There's a warning of ego drives that comes in the read, and it speaks to a risk associated with being or having some sociopathic tendencies, if that's the case. What else do we have here? Your talents in working, what the reading relates as miracles, might take on even a godlike kind of status in the eyes of others, which is pretty interesting, which could apparently lead to the sociopathic tendency, as said. But on the other hand, on the flip side, there's also a morally evolved aspect to some individuals, all right, who use their abilities in the service of the enlightenment of others around them, which, I don't know, I think I'd want to be the latter, I think, even though the former might be a little bit exciting sometimes. But in any event, what else do we have here? Regardless of all that, the reading claims you are imbued with a singular grace due to your integrity and devotion to work, regardless of whatever individual you are, at least the way I read it. Now, I don't know exactly what that means, a singular grace, but it leaves me thinking the idea is that you're laser focused on your chosen mission or endeavor. But the book also presents a conflict between golden qualities and dark characteristics. Interestingly, and the golden qualities kind of leading me to the golden ratio thing, so maybe that's the relation for the spiral. But that being said, with the conflict here, perhaps the influences affecting and shared with other Scorpios could be part of this too. Scorpio being having the Pluto as its planet focus, or planet rulership rather, which imparts dark forces, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. The solution involving finding a purpose or a passion and getting to know oneself, They're not always brought up here directly in the reading, surprisingly. Even though I like to kind of drill down on it somewhat religiously toward the end of the read. But we'll get to that too. That being said, as looked down upon and warned against, I think the dark influences are important facets, even though they're looked at in that way. At least so to one's personality. So it shouldn't be necessarily condemned or dismissed outright, in my opinion, because, those dark aspects, they shape a person's character. And they also influence your perception on the world, right? It also widens wisdom and from the experience that you gained all that from. Such things may decay someone's life, but I'd argue that's only if you let it. All right. So that being said, beauty is an overriding interest, the reading said. It's also an impulsive magnetic force of attraction said to propel you along. And to this idea of beauty, the reading also relates the importance of the darker influences, right? I just said that. And what they can contribute to the work in this regard, as mentioned. To that end, maybe see it for what its value potential is, these dark forces. I know a lot of times they get people down in the dumps, especially other Scorpios. A lot of it affects them in a real negative fashion. But maybe you can turn that into a value add, all right? That's kind of what I'm getting at here. And the reading furthers this notion to some extent, recommending balance, which, again, is a watchword for a lot of Scorpios here. This idea of self-knowledge is drilled down quite a bit in your read. It's also with the other Scorpios too, but here they made kind of a point about it. And I don't know how much of what happens around you is a product of one's character, if you like. I'm a pretty active and prolific individual, but not a whole lot of nothing happens around me. So at least in my sphere. Maybe it's totally different for you or the other people they're referring to, but for me it's a hard sell. But I believe a dramatic amount of control is in how people react to such things, and that's, for me, that's a hard and present reality. But you might work for this self-discipline that they mentioned here, at least for your, what am I trying to say here? It might come down to self-discipline and how you dedicate yourself to getting over those hurdles or working with those dark forces, I think is what I'm trying to say. But it's a very interesting day with a lot of interesting ideas, a lot of drilled down ways to overcome certain things. So in that regard, I think it was really well-rounded. So maybe I have to kind of backpedal a little bit on me saying it wasn't well-rounded. For some reason, I had in my mind that they didn't relate enough of that stuff, but I think they kind of did now that I look back on it. Any event, that being said, that's what I had to say about your birthday breakdown there. A little disjointed at times, but hey, that's how it goes with these one-shot, one-take sometimes. That being said, let's move on to your numbers and your planets. All right, your numbers and your planets. Those born on the 12th of the month are ruled by the number 3, as 2 + 1 = 3, and by the expansive planet Jupiter. And those ruled by the number 3 seek to rise to the highest positions in their particular sphere. And they also tend to be dictatorial, something those born on November 12 should be aware of. And those ruled by the number 3 value their independence. So some November 12 people may feel the need to abandon the security of a steady job in order to freelance or start their own business. Jupiterian influences encourage November 12 people to better themselves and their position. But the influence of Pluto, Scorpio's ruler, may unfortunately create cravings for money, sex, as well as power. All right, there we go. They mentioned the dark forces a little bit there for you. Let's see if I expanded on it at all here in the notes. Numbers. The number 3 in the expansive planet Jupiter for a tendency toward a dictatorial attitude, all right? Something else to be aware of, the reading said. Now, it's not the first time they've mentioned that dictatorial attitude, but it's the first time they've specifically personalized it to say that you should be aware of it. So maybe those sociopathic tendencies they mentioned earlier, there's some credence to that. And I don't know where they get their information. Maybe they're just kind of throwing at people who were born on this day and going, you know what, sociopath, enlightened individual. And they're going, oh, you know what, there's a risk for that. Who's to say? But they did mention it, so maybe take note of that. What else do I have here? It says Independence is also mentioned as an influence and encourages a betterment of oneself. But not a lot is mentioned about Pluto or Mars. And there's a co-rulership there with Scorpios. Pluto bringing the dark forces and Mars bringing a lot of aggression and sometimes anger. So, hey, you know what? If you got those in your life, maybe that's the reason. Who's to say? All right. So a lot of times they'll get into a little bit, they'll drill down a little bit more on the dark forces or the examples of it. Here they only really said a craving for money, sex, and power. And that's kind of a basic fundamental there with the Pluto rulership. But I had to say there's sweeping effects on typical dynamics, usually imparted by the primary rulership of the day, which would be Jupiter. Surprisingly little was mentioned here about how it influences that outside of that authoritarian, or was it dictatorial attitude there. But in any event, a pretty personalized entry with all that notwithstanding. A lot of times it's just kind of a copy-paste job, and they might throw in, they might change the date on it. But here they kind of made it individualistic too there. So you can take that for what it's worth. But in any event, that's been your numbers and your planets. So let's move on to your tarot. That's right. We're the more eclectic of the New Age metaphysical ideologies, if you like. But you know what? It's your birthday. We don't have to take it home and start dealing out the cards to influence our every whim and flight of fancy. So let's see what it has to say. Let's see if we can make any comparisons with what was mentioned in the breakdown. Let's dive in, shall we? The 12th card of the major arcana is the Hanged Man, who dangles by his foot in a head-down position. And though such a position seems helpless, the Hanged Man is nevertheless spiritually powerful and deeply thoughtful. The positive attributes of this card are recognizing limitations and overcoming them, as well as simply being human. Negative aspects are spiritual myopia and restrictedness. All right, this was a total copy-paste job as far as the tarot was concerned. Sometimes they personalize a little bit, but not today, I guess. So let's see what I had to say, see if I can pick a little bit of the slack there. The Hanged Man for recognizing limitation and overcoming it. All right, a seeming through line for this day to some extent, I would argue. And they also mentioned simply being human. Perhaps a direct correlation with an appreciation for beauty, perhaps. At least I could see there being a connection there. But it negatively corresponds with restrictedness and spiritual myopia. So another case in my mind for that drilled down aspect of theirs with the self-knowledge, getting to know yourself and your own true nature, right? Understanding the self is huge, if not all too important component to spirituality too, I would argue. That being said, that's about all I had to say with the tarot there. We were drilling down on a lot of things they mentioned earlier, but I thought this kind of spoke to your day a little bit, maybe informed it to a certain extent, and especially if you have that drive toward beauty and, I don't know, maybe getting out in the world and making things of your own or just appreciating it in general. It's all about being human, right? And they mentioned that. So in any event, that's your tarot. Let's move on to your health. All right, your health. November 12 people must be careful about expressing as well as attracting negative energy. The magnetic qualities of those born on this day are so strong that they can pull in all sorts of unwanted influences, thereby adversely affecting their health. Also, their psychological projections are powerful, and when materialized in the world, can return to haunt them. The good state of their health is directly proportional to their capacity for exercising willpower or over harmful behaviors and habits. All drugs, particularly those with addictive properties, should be viewed with caution. And November 12 people should beware of cults, since the fervor written into their ideology is generally not a positive influence. Religion and prayer, however, may assume great importance to them and benefit their health greatly. All right, pretty interesting there with the health. Let's see why I had to say that. Care for expressing and attracting negative energy, all right? The first time this and magnetic attraction have been mentioned in health, I believe. But metaphysics notwithstanding, and the idea that you draw in a lot of negative stuff, because I'm sure there's positives you draw in there too. The negative is mentioned a lot in these Scorpio health entries, so you're not alone in that respect. Specifically in regard to their effects on the psychological there, at least insofar as manifesting in physical health issues. And to the extent that the entry would sacrifice mention of diet and exercise in a lot of cases, as they have done here, which they don't often do. But they also recommend staying away from cults and addictive substances. So I mention all that because, they're so religious in mentioning what kind of diets people should be on and what kind of exercise they should take part in. They don't mention that here. And they instead, they mention things like staying away from the negatives and things like cults. That comes up once in a while, not all too often, but that's interesting they brought it up here. And the power of prayer. I don't know that one's ever been mentioned in health. It seems, I don't know, they're throwing in a bunch of metaphysics on this thing, surprisingly. So I just thought I'd mention all that, maybe take note of it, because it might be more important. Now, I don't want to say that from my end, but maybe they're trying to correlate that is very important in your life. Maybe more so than understanding your diet or your exercise regimen that's more often beneficial or not to you. A lot of times people don't even follow that stuff anyway, so maybe they're justified in not putting it in altogether. Who's to say? But it could be argued, right? Do I have anything else in here? No, I think that's it. Perhaps take note as they don't mention it other times there. So in any event, that's been your health. Let's move on to some advice. I have a feeling we're going to talk more about, self-improvement, right? Let's get into it. Concentrate on strengthening your personal morality. Cultivate the simple value of kindness and consideration toward others. Resolve your inner struggles. Use self-knowledge to buttress your will. All right. They did a little bit, but they added a little bit more into it there to change it up a bit. I appreciate that. What did I have to say here? I had to write it in the book. I ran out of space on the notepad. Often I go point by point with the advice, but here it's all integrated and hyper-focused on discovering yourself by and large. Not to poo-poo that. Huge advice by my mind. I would just have liked something a little more different or novel. Maybe examine the beauty, for instance, as much as it's been drilled down upon with the self-knowledge there. That said, lean in on beauty and synthesizing those negative aspects of your life into something productive, right? I liked the part where they said, use your magnetic attraction as the red-hot cauldron by which to fuel your soul, right? I think that speaks to synthesizing the elements of your life into some kind of value add. Let's see, for those kind of things that are seemingly devoid in other areas. That being said, making negative a positive, right? A lot of these other Scorpio folks, they get real down in the dumps when those negatives hit them. And I think, this suggestion that you turn a negative into a positive would have been great for every day to be mentioned there. But they only really went over it with you, in my opinion. So it's kind of interesting that that's how it happened. But in any event, that's been your advice and what I had to say about it. Let's move on to your meditation. All right, your meditation. The thirst for knowledge, like that for water, must be slaked. All right. There's a word I hadn't heard before. I had to look it up. It was another word for quenched or satisfied. So one more time. The thirst for knowledge, like that for water, must be slaked. Okay, that's your meditation. It's your birthday. I'm not going to throw some spin on it or try to influence it one way or the other for you. That's just for you. But I wanted to let you know what that word meant, just in case. In any event, that's been your meditation. Let's move on to your strengths and weaknesses. That's right. Let's find out what we're strong in and what we're weak in. Hold up that objective mirror if you like. I'm pretty sure they've gone over these in the book some one way or the other, but let's see what we got here. Your strengths, you're magnetic, you're seductive, and you're attractive. But your weaknesses. Are you ready? Let's do the work. Let's hold up the other side of that objective mirror, the one that makes your face bigger there. Your weaknesses, you're heavy, you're addictive, and you're troubled. Ooh, they keep bringing up troubled with everybody in the Scorpio period here. But heavy, you know what? I didn't know what this one meant a long time back. But somebody brought up it might just be that your energy is heavy. Like you come in and it's just like a weight in the room or on people. And so in that regard, it might be that. Maybe with all this negative stuff coming in at you, and that's how you deal with it. You brunt it all. Who's to say? But you know what? I would argue all those things can be improved upon. You got to turn that negative into a positive, right? That's right. You're magnetic, seductive, and attractive. Hey, you got this in the bag, I would argue. At least if you use your strengths against those weaknesses. All right, hey, that's your strengths and weaknesses. So let's get in on those born on this day. And when we get in with those born on this day, something I like to do, not only see who shares your company, but I like to segue over to the idea of figuring out your passions. That's right. It was brought up earlier. And I try to do this with every born on this day entry. But figuring out our passions. It's important that we get out of bed just doing backflips to get into our day, right? But a lot of times we don't do that. Why is that? Because we just got a job we don't particularly like. I get out in the world and meet folks all the time, ask them what they do. More importantly, if they like it. A lot of times they don't. And I just think it's because they haven't had the time to put into work to figure out what their passions are, what they can put themselves towards, to make a fulfilling life. And you know what? There's no judgment there. It's just a lot of times we get in a job that, doesn't allow us to put in time to figure out what we want to do. And if we do know what we want to do, we just don't have a way to make it financially viable. So in any event, I figured this is the perfect opportunity to not only see who shares your company, but what they did to get their stamp in the book, to get put in the book at all, right? And maybe we can draw a little bit of inspiration from that. But if nothing else, if we can't draw any inspiration from what other folks did, hey, maybe me just putting the bug in your ear about it can help you start getting them fires rekindled or kindled to begin with. But in any event, let's get in with it, all right? I think you get the idea. So those born on this day. We have Sun Yat-sen, the father of the Chinese Republic, and a medical doctor, and a revolutionary, a president, and relinquished power voluntarily. We also have Auguste Rodin, a French sculptor, Grace Kelly, the film actress, Princess of Monaco, and killed in a car crash, it says. We also have Neil Young, the Canadian singer-songwriter and guitarist. We have Nadia Comaneci, a Romanian gymnast, 5-time Olympic gold medalist, and the first to score a perfect 10 in the Olympics. We have Alexander Borodin, Russian composer and a research chemist. Tonya Harding, the U.S. Olympic figure skater, implicated in attack on skater Nancy Kerrigan, if you're old enough to remember that. We have Charles Manson. Oh, that's where they got the sociopath. That negative influence is there. Psychopath cult leader convicted for inciting murders. Oh, no one wants to hear about that, but you know what? Can't have the good without the bad sometimes. So, a Charles Manson. All right, who else we have here? Buck Clayton, a jazz trumpeter and arranger. Charlie Mariano, an alto saxophonist and composer. Harry A. Blackman, U.S. Supreme Court Justice. We also have Elizabeth Cady Stanton, 19th century feminist and social reformer. Booker T. Jones, singer-songwriter, famous for Booker T and the MGs. We have Edouin Dolphus, a French astrophysicist and the 3-time gas balloon world record holder. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that name, but the French ones get me sometimes. We have Al Michaels, a sports commentator. DeWitt Wallace, a publisher of and the Reader's Digest founder. Fang He, a Chinese sculptor. Oh, yeah, 2 of them there. Or maybe the other guy was just the father of the Chinese Revolution there. Kim Hunter, a film actress. We also have Richard Quine, a film director of Strangers When We Meet. And Robert Hayes, the social activist, lawyer, and a homeless advocate. All right. Hey, we had quite a few folks in there that were artists, right? And the idea of beauty, right? Especially with like a figure skater sword. It was just making things happen with their body. And hurting other people while they're at it, too, ostensibly, right? Any event. That's been those born on this day. Hopefully you drew some kind of inspiration from all of that. I know that's a big-ass hard sell, but you know what? Maybe just hearing as much, like I said, will help stoke up the fires. But with those born on this day having been related, that essentially rounds out your birthday read. Except to say, your season is fall, your sign once again is Scorpio, the Scorpio III period specifically. And your quality and element is fixed water. And what does that mean? Well, that's a different video altogether, but you can find it here on the channel if you're interested. But that being said, this has been November 12th, the day of sensual charisma, from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Hugh Stelfers. I have an affiliate link for this book down in the description if you're interested in picking up your own copy. It makes a great coffee table book. I don't know, maybe you have some company over and you have a hard time getting that ice broken. Well, this is going to do so in a literal and a figurative fashion. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you get the hardcover there and break that ice there. But you know what's going to get the conversation flowing for better or for worse? Get that party started. But in any event, that's not what's important here. Like I said at the top, what's important here? Wishing you a happy birthday. That's right. I hope you have one. All right. But for everyone else who joined us, I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I hope you join us for your birthday reading. With that being said, lest we forget before we take us out, your daily numbers. That's right. A 3 and a 5, 4 and 8. Get out there and let the universe show you it's with you on your path. That's right. See, taste, feel, touch the magic. And if you do, you're going to understand why I brought it up. But at the very least, you're going to get your steps in. Get in some of that exercise that they didn't have the time to recommend in the book. That's right. In any event, once again, happy birthday. Take care of yourselves.